Boom. All right, let's begin again. Welcome back. That was not me talking to you. I was talking to them. All of the people on the YouTubes. Talking to all those people. You guys know that YouTubes is a word? It's not a word. Yeah, I know all the people on the internets. On the World Wide Webs. All right. So we're talking about percents. We're doing some introduction. So who has an idea of what percent means? Who's got an idea? Yeah, Desi. Out of 100. Out of 100, I love it. And what out of 100? Out of 100 is perfect. Good idea, I love it. Yeah, a fraction of 100. So yeah, and I'm going to call it like a fraction, because we don't write percents as fractions often, do we? So let's go with pen. Oops. A fraction. But, right, you were absolutely right. Percent, right, cent, we think money. There's 100 cents in a dollar. So percent means an amount per 100, right? So that's what it means. Percent model, so like 15% can be written as 15 over 100. Can also be written like this. We're going to be practicing that today a little bit. So show 35% as a model. This is what your introduction was on your con lesson the other day, right? So 35%, there are 100 boxes here, so what should I do? 3 by 10, okay, sure, get 30. I'll shade that. Boom, 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 boom. Now, unfortunately, that's only 30, so I need 5 more boxes. There we go. Be careful, you only shave 35 boxes. But why does this represent 35 as a model? Well, because there's 35 boxes that are shaded out of 100, which is percent. Okay? So do 71 as well. I'm going to trick you on this one. Ready? Watch this. With that little one extra. Right? 71%. Coolio? Sometimes I like coloring, right? Give you a little chance to little color here. This next piece is something that people are like, why do I even care about this? But surprisingly, this is going to be really helpful for us with thinking about fractions, thinking about percents, in terms of factors and multiples. If I know the factors of 100, it makes it really easy to scale different fractions. So like, if I have 2/5, what percent is that? Well, because 5 is a factor of 100, I could easily scale 2/5 up to 100 by multiplying the top and the bottom by 20. Well, why? Because 5 and 20 is a factor pair for 100. So when we're working with percents, knowing the factors in 100 in terms of factor pairs is really, really helpful for scaling things up and scaling things down. So give me the first and easiest factor pair for 100. What is it? 1 and 100, right? 1, 100. That's the easiest factor pair. Give me another one. 2 and 50. What's another one? 4 and 25, good. I'm going to run out of room, I better start writing smaller. 5 and 20. And then the last one, Harswickman? 10 and 10. So I'm just going to put that 110 there. Sorry, I didn't have enough room to get that. But knowing the factor pairs is very, very helpful for us. So 1 and 100, 2 and 50, 4 and 25, 5 and 20, and 10 and 10. And we'll see that in a moment of why that can be helpful. So if I'm like, all right, what percent is 4 out of 10? Well, what can I multiply the top and bottom by to get it to be 100, right? Because it's a fraction out of 100. So that's what we're going to be doing next, okay? We're going to write fractions as decimals, decimals as fractions, fractions as percents, percents as decimals, etc. Lots of different things. Lots of different examples, lots of different rules. All right, so you and your partner, I want you to do A, B, and C. Talk about what fraction it is first, and then what percent that would be. Take about 25 seconds, ready, set. With your partner, talk about it, go. Please write the fraction first. What did you guys notice about the shaded region of this box? Or of the boxes, excuse me.
They're all the same.
It's all the same shaded, right? It's all the same shaded region. But what did you notice about the fractions? The fractions are different, right? The fractions are different. So the first fraction was 20 out of 100, right? Or what percent? 20%. That one's a really easy percent, right? 20 out of 100, 20%. Pretty easy one. Whenever I look at the percent symbol, I look at it as like, oh, there's 2 zeros. Like out of 100. But what about this one? This one's 2 out of 10. Same shaded region though, right? So 2 out of 10 would be 20%. So 1/5, that's also 20%. Interesting. And that's because these denominators all can scale to 100. It makes it a little bit easier for us, right? How many times do I need to multiply 5 by to get to 100? 20 times. I'm just trying to get you to think about things in different ways. It'll make some more sense when we get to that part. Okay, so that's cool. I wanted you guys to see that the same shaded region will have the same percent despite having different fractions, right? 20 out of 100, 2 out of 10, and 1/5. I heard somebody say something about simplified. These are just simplified versions of this one, right? All right, now fractions to decimals. Anybody remember how to get a fraction to a decimal? How do we convert fractions to decimals?
Take the decimal 2 places over?
You're thinking about how to get a decimal to a percent. We're looking for a fraction to decimal.
You divide them, so you divide 7 divided by 8.
Good. So I'm going to be a little bit more specific. I'm going to say divide top by bottom, but honestly, it's just divide, right? Divide top by bottom. So here's where we'd go, right? 7 divided by 8. But you guys have a calculator in front of you. Do that. This is where the calculator saves us time on side work, right? We don't need to do long division. We've got a calculator in front of us. 7 divided by 8, Luke, is?
0.875.
That would be thousands, but if you say 0 point, that's okay. The correct terminology would be 0.875. That's one way of saying it. The other way of saying it would be 875 thousandths. So don't combine them. Correct terminology would be either 0.875, that's one way, or 875 thousandths. So we don't combine those two. Just so you know, every time you divide something by 8, it's going to have 3 digits. Just so you know, it's going to have 3 digits, and it's going to be something with a 2-5 or something with a 7-5. So you can be aware. And what do we do for the next one? You and your partner do it. Decide together. I want you to share your division with each other. You should have your calculator out. Don't just trust me, trust you. So you look at this one on the calculator. So what decimal would it be?
0.76 repeating.
Yeah, 0.76 repeating, and so our answer would be 0.76 repeating. Don't think that you should round because, well, I want to round. No, if the decimal is repeating, then the decimal should be repeating. Okay? Cool. Questions on that? And here's the big thing for today. Decimal to percent. D2P, right? Everybody say D2P. Means decimal to percent. And it follows this little pattern. D to P or P to D. Doesn't really matter, okay? Right, D to P in alphabetical order, draw an arrow and put a 2 in the middle. shows which way you should move the decimal point. So D to P, draw that if it's not already on your page. If it's not there, I want you drawing it. So put D to P. Why 2? Why not the word 2? Why the number 2?
You get to move the decimal 2 places over.
Exactly. That's why I call on Desi, because she got that earlier, right? So we move that decimal place 2.2 to which direction? So if I'm going decimal to percent, which direction am I going? Move the decimal point to the right. To the right. So 0.07 written as a percent is 1, 2, move it 2 spots to the right, is what percent? 7%. 0.607, move it 1, 2, becomes 60.7%. 0.9, wait, I can't move it 2 spaces. What should I do? Yeah, just put that placeholder 0 in there. 1, 2, you put that placeholder 0 in there. I know it's tough to see, but I drew a placeholder 0 in. Because that tells me that it's now what?
90%.
90%. And eventually you'll get so good at these that you won't even need to do that moving. Eventually you'll look at the calculator and you'll do your division, you'll do your addition, and it will say 0.607. You'll just look at that and be like, oh, that's 60.7%. You'll get so good at just doing that, move the decimal in your head, that you'll get good at that. Okay. Questions? Questions on that one? Now let's do fractions to percents, okay? So what should I do? Fractions to percents are difficult. Well, there's 2 ways I can do it. The way that I find to be the easiest is to first convert to a decimal using division. And then I move D to P. So for me, that's my favorite way of doing it. Of course, there are other ways to do it, right? If you would like to use the scaling method that I've shared, it makes it a little bit easier. Let's do it first with my method of converting to a decimal using division, then moving the decimal place over. Let's do that first, and then we'll talk about an alternate way of doing it. Okay? So write 6 over 25 as a percent. So the first thing first, I want to do 6 divided by 25. And this is where you use your calculator, right? To make it go faster. So 6 divided by 25 is 0.24. I now have a decimal, which I can now go 1, 2 over, and I get what? 24%. Was anybody able to just look at the calculator and see 0.24 and know that that was 24%? Eventually you'll probably get that way. Please be careful though. If you start to do that, sometimes you forget that when you see 0.24, that's a decimal, and you can interpret that decimal as a percent. Okay? So 24%. All right? And now 3 over 4. What do we got there? I think many of us might know this one, right? I think we know this one. That's a decimal point conversion we have memorized. 3/4 is one we have memorized. What is it? It's 0.75, right? Thank you for memorizing that. Remember, I've shared that will come up a lot. Why? Because that's 3/4. 75 cents. Just so you know, I tossed 3 invisible quarters into the air and caught them all in my hand. They were all heads. Very rare. Just so you know. So it's 0.75, and that would then be 75%. Oops, that's supposed to be red. That's okay. 75%. Now 1/50th. Remember how I shared there's other ways to do it? I don't have to divide 1 by 50. What could I do in my head? Well, 50 is a factor of 100. So 1/50th, what would that be as a fraction over 100? If 1 over 50, Sandra, 2 over 100. Which would then be what? 2%. Well, we could have used that method for all of these. Why? So think about it. 1/50th becomes 2 over 100, right? So that's 2%. Why could we have done that method with B or A as well?
They're all factors of.
They're factors of 100. Why do you think we made that list? Well, because sometimes we can do that. So how could we have done this? Well, what would I have done with this fraction to make it be a fraction out of 100? What could I have done, Saeed?
Times both sides by 4.
The top and bottom, yeah. Not both sides, but top and bottom by 4, absolutely. So what's 4 times 6? 24 out of then 100. What would I have done with this one? How could I have scaled 3 over 4 to be something out of 100?
Multiply both sides by 20.
Top and bottom, I multiply both the top and the bottom, not by 20, because that would give us 80. But by 25, you look at your factor pairs, and 5 and 24. So 3 times 25 is 75. So you see, I'm not writing this down because this is more of a thinking method, right? This is very much a doing method, right? This is more of a thinking method. I'm okay with both. I love both methods. I think that sometimes it's faster to do this. Convert it to that out of 100 thing. Okay? So let's see if you can do it both ways here. Grades that you take, all right, you take a quiz that has 20 questions and you get 17 answers right. What is your percent grade on the quiz? Well, how do we set this fraction up? Because this is a fraction, right? It's going to be a fraction. What would our fraction be? Anna?
17 over 20.
17 over 20. Let's do the scaling method, like what we did here. Rather than doing this division and moving the decimal place over, let's scale it. What can I multiply the top and bottom by?
4.
Careful.
5.
5. If you were ever unsure, flip back over to the other side where we made our list of factors. Remember we drew those lines together to get factor pairs? So if you're ever unsure, this is where you use your calculator if you don't know this one, because I don't know this one. 85 over 100. So therefore that is an 85%. How else could we have done this one? We could have used the division method. We would have done 85 divided by, or excuse me, not 85. We would have done 17 divided by 20. We would have gotten 0.85. Move that decimal place over 1, 2, and get 85%. Either way is great. I don't care which one you use. There's multiple ways of thinking. It's just whichever one clicks to you. Okay. All right, only a little bit left. Like I said, we don't have any homework today, so yeah, awesome. All right, two more types, percents to decimals. So, what should you probably draw? Draw that thing again. Draw that D2P. And we draw our arrows. I want to go percent to decimals. So I need to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left. Because in our image, right, P to D. See how it's the arrow is drawing to the left? Okay? But I'm a little confused. I don't see a decimal point. I says move the decimal point 2 spaces left. There is no decimal point on any of these problems.
On B.
On B, there's a decimal point. I can see it. Good call, good call.
The decimal is behind the number.
Behind the number, behind the what digit? Behind the what digit? Behind the ones digit, exactly. So it's always right here. So 45% is moving to the left. Boop, boop. What's that as a decimal? 0. Can you put the 0 in front? That way we remember that it's a decimal. Now here thanks for answering that. That was good. Move that to the left 2 spots. 1, 2. Right? So a lot of people are like, oh, it's 0.65, right? Oh. What do I need to do? When I move that decimal place over, I need to put a placeholder 0. If I have to move it to where there isn't a number, what number is there? If there isn't a number present, there's a placeholder 0 floating. So when I read this, it's 0.065. Just so you know, percent is out of 100. So which digit would be the ones digit for percents? Well, it's the hundredths. A hundredth digit on the decimal point is the ones digit in a percent. So whenever you see that. So hundredths on a decimal is the ones on a percent. All right, last one, 3%, what's that? 0.03. The biggest mistake, here, I'm going to tell you right now, about a quarter of you are going to do this. Because there's a 3 there. But that's not the hundredths digit. Remember the hundredths digit, you see that that's 0.03, that's the hundredths digit. Why would it make sense that the hundredths digit is the percents? Because percents are fractions out of 100. So the hundredth digit should be a percent, not the 10th digit. 3/10 is 30 hundredths. Okay? If you have 3 hundredths, that's the same thing as saying 3%. Something out of 100, a fraction out of 100. Or the decimal in the hundredths place. Now percents as fractions, this one goes pretty quick as well. Percents as fractions, I put the percent over 100. Because what's the definition of a percent? It's a fraction over 100. And then I need to simplify. So divide out common factors. So let's look at 45%. Okay? So I write this as 45 over 100. And then I would need to do what? Absolutely. How would I do that? KJ? Divide the top and bottom by 5, exactly. Hey, remember that list of factors that we made on the front? That will be helpful for us. That list of factors will help us simplify these. We can look for those factors, because those are going to be the only ones we have. Look for those factors and see if we can divide them. And 45 divided by 5 is what? 9. 9 over 20, and we're done. You and your partner do B and C. Ready, set, go. Don't divide C by 5 as well. Talk to your partner about what you should divide C by. Remember, you have a calculator to make your division easier, right? You don't have to do side work. You should still show your work like this. You don't have to do side work. No side work needed. Calculators just make this go faster. Look up when you have them. Yeah? Yes? See? Alright. So these are the ones we already have memorized. 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, 2/3, and 3/4. Those 5. We already have the fraction to decimal conversion memorized. Throw 1/8 in there and it'll make your life a little bit easier. Because 1/8, like I said, always has 3 decimal points. It's always going to end in a 2-5 or a 7-5. So 1/8 ends in a 2-5. 3/8 will then end in a 7-5. 5/8 will end in a 2-5. And 7/8 will end in a 7-5. But you don't have to memorize those. But I want you to look at them, and so that way they're familiar to you. So that way when you do them, you're like, oh, okay, this looks familiar to me. Even if you don't have it memorized. Because I don't have it memorized. The 8s, I don't have it memorized. But I'm familiar enough with them that I can know if I'm on the right track. Okay? And so now we can add in the decimal, the percent to our decimal memorization. So we have our decimal to fractions. We have those memorized. Now you can throw the percents in there to be worth, memorizing. Be a good idea. Okay.